I've had personal experience trawling through files in medical records departments that tend to be in the deep, dark basement of the hospital and having a lot of difficulty in trying to be able to capture data in this way. At best, you can only produce research on a small number of patients whose files you can personally look at and personally create your own sort of small database for.
I think as individual researchers, none of us have time to collect data, even in the clinical setting within a hospital.
You spend a lot of your time dealing with the administrative burden or overlay and not so much time doing the research itself, and that is one of the things that frustrates me.
Amongst the biggest problems that investigators face are data collection, data storage, data analysis, statistical analysis of data. A second order of problems is concerned with ethics and with privacy. And the amazing thing about BioGrid is that it addresses all of those things.
BioGrid is a concept that started back probably about 2003, and it was driven by the need for a variety of clinicians to have better tools to capture data, to link data and to analyse data. So it began as a small project limited to the Royal Melbourne Hospital and has really grown from there across Victoria, Australia, and now we're starting to get some international links. And the intent very much is to improve data collection and analysis of the various types of data that we collect, and that may be part of routine clinical care, or it may be part of the laboratory research that we do. But it's really solving a problem, trying to develop a technology that can help us to analyse data very quickly and very accurately, and often to do things that we couldn't do before.
BioGrid is about collecting data, it's about linking data, and it's about doing that in a well-devised, well-thought-out, ethical, privacy-protected way.
BioGrid allows the linkage of data sets, your own data, linked up with someone else's data.
One really good example of that has been a neurosurgeon PhD researcher who has been able to really use aspects of two different databases, the epilepsy database and the brain tumour database, and bring those together for a really useful project on tumour-associated epilepsy.
Clinical trial research these days is based on asking very specific questions. So you don't want breast cancer patients, you want breast cancer patients of a particular subset, usually of a particular hormonal status, who are at a particular stage through their treatment and whose tumour perhaps expresses an additional gene of interest, for example. The old trials where we would really group people together are gone. And the problem for us is trying to be able to identify the particular patient set that we need quickly, at the right time, at a time that's relevant for them, and put them into a clinical trial that offers them some benefit. And then from our point of view, get that data back quickly, deal with it, and move on to the next question. And without vehicles like BioGrid, that's really not going to happen.
Currently we're involved in an international collaboration looking at the lung cancer genome. This is a major multi-centred international study, the largest of its kind to date. And being able to clinically annotate tissue specimens was a major impetus in us being granted investigator status within that study. And I think that when international researchers see the potential of something like BioGrid, they can't help but be interested.
We need to be sure that the ethical issues have been thought through in terms of how the data is being contributed, how it's being stored, and how it's being released.
BioGrid creates a privacy network that allows us to interrogate the data without disclosing the person's privacy.
Information at the sites is collected in an identified manner, but when the researcher accesses BioGrid, they don't see any of those identifiers, they just see a unique number that's allocated to each of the patients.
In effect, it automates the whole de-identification process, so the local ethics committee should no longer have those concerns about the integrity of data security.
clearly speeds up the time to finish a trial, find out whether the drug's going to be effective, and therefore that will shorten the time to actually using the drug in the clinic. We had a recent example of that around Melbourne where a company came with a particular drug. There were only 12 patients in the world that were going to be put on that drug, but we were able to put 3 patients on inside 3 months, even though it was quite a rare mutation, because they could search the BioGrid database, they could see whenever a patient was coming through with that mutation.
Most of my projects are using thousands of patients. I can't think of any other way that I would be able to do something like that.
BioGrid is trying to provide as much resource across as many different aspects of research as possible, and part of that resource is the data managers, and they may be able to help with designing data forms but also helping with data analysis, and they can be accessed remotely, it can be accessed online.
For individual researchers coming in with research ideas and research projects, the costs are significantly less than what they otherwise would be, undoubtedly.
You'd have to employ 2 to 3 to 4 people to gather the data that you would like, and you save 3 or 4 salaries over a period of a year for 500 patients. So the research will become more and more cost effective.
I'm excited about the future of clinical research. I think so many things are bursting wide open. And when I look at the contribution that can be made by BioGrid, I get even more excited.
We have a high quality medical system. With a high quality data sharing system, we can be at the front of all of the medical genetics discoveries that are happening today. As BioGrid matures, genetic data will be available, pathology data, radiological data will become accessible from all the patients. So even though a particular researcher may have one idea, they can then cross those boundaries to see how other diseases have tackled a problem, or to see whether there are comorbidities that might be associated with their disease.
You need to be collecting data prospectively. So if you're collecting data prospectively, why not make it as useful as it can be?
That's the purpose of BioGrid, is to help researchers. That's the only reason that it's been created, and that's the reason that it'll continue with that at the forefront.
As this becomes more routinely available, I think people will just not be able to imagine that we ever did without it.